2 Kings chapter 1. Then Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab, and Ahaziah fell down through a lattice in his upper room that was in Samaria, and was sick. And he sent messengers and said to them, Go, ask of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover this disease. But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say to them, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that you go to ask of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Now therefore thus saith the Lord, You shall not come from that bed on which you have gone up, but shall surely die. And Elijah departed. And when the messengers turned back to him, he said, Why have you now turned back? And they said to him, There came a man up to meet us, and said to us, Go, turn again to the king who sent you, and say to him, Thus saith the Lord, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that you go to ask of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore you shall not come down from that bed on which you have gone up, but shall surely die. And he said to them, What kind of man was he who came up to meet you, and told you these words? And they answered him, He was a hairy man, and was bound with a girdle of leather around his loins. And he said, It is Elijah the Tishbite. Then the king sent to him a captain of 50 with his 50, and he went up to him, and behold, he sat on the top of a hill. And he spoke to him, Man of God, the king has said, Come down. And Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, If I am a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven, and burn up you and your 50. And there came down fire from heaven, and burned up him and his 50. Again also he sent to him another captain of 50 with his 50. And he answered and said to him, O man of God, thus saith the king, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said to him, If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven, and burn up you and your 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven, and burned up him and his 50. And he sent again a captain of the third 50 with his 50 men. And the third captain of 50 came up and fell on his knees before Elijah, and begged him, and said to him, O man of God, I pray you, let my life and the life of these 50 your servants be precious in your sight. Behold, there came down fire from heaven, and burned up the 2 captains of the former 50s with their 50s. Therefore let my life now be precious in your sight. And the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, Go down with him, do not be afraid of him. And he arose and went down with him to the king. And he said to him, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, you have sent messengers to ask of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. Is it not because there is no God in Israel to seek his word? Therefore you shall not come down off that bed on which you have gone up, but shall surely die. And so he died, according to the word of the Lord which Elijah had spoken. And Jehoram reigned in his stead in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because he had no son. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaziah, which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? 2 Kings chapter 2. And when the Lord desired to take Elijah up into heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said to Elisha, Stay here, I pray you, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel. And Elisha said, As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. And so they went down to Bethel. And the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel came forth to Elisha, and said to him, Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from your head today? And he said, Yes, I know. Hold your peace. And Elijah said to him, Elisha, I pray you, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho. And he said, As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. And so they came to Jericho, and the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho came to Elisha, and said to him, Do you know that the Lord will take your master away from your head today? And he answered, Yes, I know. Hold your peace. And Elijah said to him, I pray you, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jordan. And he said, As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. And the 2 of them went on, and 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood to look afar off. And the 2 of them stood afar off. And Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together, and struck the waters, and they were divided here and there, so that the two of them went over on dry ground. And when they had gone over, Elijah said to Elisha, Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken away from you. And Elisha said, I pray you, let a double portion of your spirit be upon me. And he said, You have asked a hard thing, but if you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so to you. But if not, it shall not be. And as they still went on and talked, behold, a chariot of fire appeared, and horses of fire, and separated the two of them. And Elijah went by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariots of Israel, and the horsemen of it. And he saw him no more. And he took hold of his own clothes, and tore them into two pieces. He also took up the mantle of Elijah, which had fallen from him, and went back and stood by the bank of Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him, and struck the waters, and said, Where is the Lord God of Elijah? And when he also hit the waters, they parted here and there. And Elisha went over. And when the sons of the prophets who had come to watch at Jericho saw him, they said, The spirit of Elijah rests upon Elisha. And they came to meet him, and bowed themselves to the ground before him. And they said to him, Behold now, there are with your servants 50 strong men. We pray you, let them go and seek your master, lest perhaps the Spirit of the Lord has taken him up and cast him upon some mountain, or into some valley. And he said, You shall not send. And when they urged him until he was ashamed, he said, Send. They therefore sent 50 men, and they looked for 3 days, but did not find him. And when they had come again to him, for he remained at Jericho, he said to them, Did I not say to you, Do not go? And the men of the city said to Elisha, Behold, I pray you, the location of this city is pleasant, as my Lord sees, but the water is bad, and the ground is barren. And he said, Bring me a new jar, and put salt in it. And they brought it to him, and he went forth to the spring of the waters, and threw the salt in there, and said, Thus saith the Lord, I have healed these waters. There shall not be any more death or barrenness from there. And so the waters were healed unto this day, according to the saying of Elisha, which he spoke. And he went up from there to Bethel, and as he was going up by the way, there came forth little children out of the city, and mocked him, and said to him, Go up, you bald head, go up, you bald head. And he turned back, and looked upon them, and cursed them in the name of the Lord. And there came forth 2 she-bears out of the woods, and tore 42 children of them. And he went from there to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. 2 Kings chapter 3. Now Jehoram the son of Ahab began to reign over Israel in Samaria the 18th year of Jehoshaphat king of Judah, and he reigned 12 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, but not like his father and his mother, for he put away the image of Baal that his father had made. Nevertheless he clung to the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. He did not depart from them. And Mesha king of Moab was a sheepmaster, and rendered unto the king of Israel 100,000 lambs, and 100,000 rams with the wool. But when Ahab was dead, and the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel, King Jehoram went out of Samaria at the same time, and numbered all of Israel. And he went and sent to Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, saying, The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me against Moab to battle? And he said, I will go up. I am as you are, my people are as your people, my horses are as your horses. And he said, Which way shall we go up? And he answered, The way through the wilderness of Edom. And so the king of Israel and the king of Judah and the king of Edom went, and they went around behind for 7 days' journey. And there was no water for the army and for the cattle that followed them. And the king of Israel said, Alas, that the Lord has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. But Jehoshaphat said, Is there not here a prophet of the Lord, that we may ask of the Lord by him? And one of the king of Israel's servants answered him and said, Here is Elisha the son of Shaphat, who poured water on the hands of Elijah. And Jehoshaphat said, The word of the Lord is with him. And so the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. And Elisha said to the king of Israel, What do I have to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother. And the king of Israel said to him, No, for the Lord has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. And Elisha said, As the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, surely if it were not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, I would not look toward you nor see you. But now bring me a minstrel. And when the minstrel played, the hand of the Lord came upon him. And he said, Thus saith the Lord, Make this valley full of ditches. For thus saith the Lord, Ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain. Still the valley shall be filled with water, so that you may drink, both you and your cattle and your animals. And this is but a light thing in the sight of the Lord. Ye will also deliver the Moabites into your hand, and you shall strike every fenced city and every choice city, and you shall cut down every good tree and stop all wells of water, and mar every good piece of land with stones. And in the morning, when the meal offering was offered, behold, water came by the way of Edom, and the country was filled with water. And when all the Moabites heard that the kings had come up to fight against them, they gathered all that were able to put on armor, and upward, and stood in the border. And they rose up early in the morning, and the sun shone upon the water, and the Moabites saw the water on the other side red like blood. And they said, This is blood. The kings are surely slain, and they have stricken one another. Now therefore, Moab, to the spoil. And when they came up to the camp of Israel, the Israelites rose up and struck the Moabites, so that they fled before them. But they went forward, striking the Moabites even in their country. And they beat down the cities, and each man cast his stone on every good piece of land, and filled it. And they stopped all the wells of water, and cut down all the good trees. Only in Kiharaseth did they leave the stones of it. However, the slingers went around it and struck it. And when the king of Moab saw that the battle was too sore for him, he took with him 700 men who drew swords, in order to break through to the king of Edom. But they could not. Then he took his oldest son, who should have reigned in his stead, and offered him for a burnt offering upon the wall. And there was great anger against Israel, and they left him, and returned to their own land. 2 Kings chapter 4. We're reading from the second book of the Kings. We begin reading now chapter 4. Now a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried to Elisha, saying, Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. And the creditor has come to take my 2 sons to be bondmen to him. And Elisha said to her, What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? And she said, Your handmaid has not a thing in the house except a pot of oil. Then he said, Go out and borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels. Do not borrow just a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door upon you and your sons, and shall pour out into all those vessels, and ye shall set aside that which is full. And so she went from him, and shut the door upon her, and upon her sons, who had brought the vessels to her. And she poured out, and when the vessels were full, she said to her son, Bring me still another vessel. And he said to her, There is not another vessel left. And the oil stopped. And then she came and told the man of God, and he said, Now go sell the oil, and pay the debt, you and your children, and let them live from the rest. And there came a day when Elisha passed over to Shunem, where there was a great woman, and she laid hold on him to eat bread. And so it was that as often as he passed by, he turned in there to eat bread. And she said to her husband, Behold, now I see that this is a holy man of God, who passes us continually. I pray you, let us make a little room on the wall, and let us set a bed for him there, and a table, and a stool, and a lampstand. And when he comes to us, he shall turn in there. And there came a day when he came in there, and he turned into the room, and lay there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, Call the Shumanite. And when he had called her, she stood before him, and he said to him, Say now to her, Behold, you have been thoughtful for us with all this care. What is to be done for you? Would you be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the army? And she answered, I dwell among my own people. And he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily she has no child, and her husband is old. And he said, Call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door, and he said, About this time, according to the time of life, you shall embrace a son. And she said, No, my lord, O man of God, do not lie to your handmaiden. And the woman conceived and bore a son at that time that Elisha had said to her, according to the time of life. And when the child had grown, there came a day when he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said to his father, My head, my head. And he said to the lad, Carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees until noon, and then died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. And she called to her husband, and said, I pray you, send me one of the young men and one of the asses, so that I may run to the man of God, and come again. And he said, Why will you go to him today? It is neither a new moon nor a Sabbath. And she said, Yet it shall be well. And then she saddled an ass, and said to her servant, Drive and go forward. Do not hold back your riding for me, unless I tell you. And so she went and came to the man of God to Mount Carmel. And when the man of God saw her afar off, it came to pass that he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, there is a Shunammite. I pray you, run now to meet her, and say to her, Is it well with you, and well with your husband, and well with the child? And she answered, It is well. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to push her away. And the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is troubled within her. And the Lord has hidden it from me, and has not told me. And then she said, Did I desire a son from my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? And then he said to Gehazi, Bind up your loins, and take my staff in your hand, and go your way. If you meet any man, do not greet him. And if any greet you, do not answer him again. And lay my staff upon the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. And he arose and followed her. And Gehazi passed on before them, and laid the staff upon the face of the child. But there was neither voice nor hearing. Therefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, The child has not awakened. And when Elisha had come to the house, behold, the child was dead, and lay upon his bed. He therefore went in and shut the door upon the two of them, and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child became warm. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro. And then he went up and stretched himself upon him, and the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi, and said, Call this Shunammite woman. And so he called her, and when she had come in unto him, he said, Take up your son. Then she went in and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. And Elisha came to Gilgal, and there was a drought in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said to his servant, Set on the great pot, and boil pottage for the sons of the prophets. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and he found a wild vine, and gathered his lap full of wild gourds from it, and came and cut them up into the pot of pottage. But they did not know them. And so they poured out pottage for the men to eat. And as they were eating of the pottage, they cried out and said, O man of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat of it. But he said, Then bring meal. And he cast it into the pot, and he said, Pour out for the people, so that they may eat. And there was no evil thing in the pot. And there came a man from Baal Shal-Ishah, and brought the man of God bread from the firstfruits, 20 loaves of barley, and full ears of grain in the husk of it. And he said, Give to the people that they may eat. And his servant said, What, should I set this before 100 men? He said again, Give to the people, so that they may eat. For thus saith the Lord, They shall eat, and shall leave some of it. And so he set it before them, and they did eat, and left some of it, according to the word of God. Chapter 5, 2 Kings chapter 5. Now Naaman, captain of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and he was in high favor because the Lord had given deliverance to Syria by him. He was also a mighty man, but he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by companies, and had brought away a little maid as a captive out of the land of Israel, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said to her mistress, I wish my lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would recover him from his leprosy. And one went in and told his lord, saying, This and this said the maid who is from the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. And he departed, and took with him 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Now when this letter has come to you, behold, I have sent Naaman my servant to you, so that you may recover him of his leprosy. And when the king of Israel had read the letter, he tore his clothes, and said, Am I God, to kill and to make alive, that this man sends to me to recover a man from his leprosy? Therefore I pray you, consider and see how he seeks a quarrel with me. And when Elisha the man of God had heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent to the king, saying, Why have you torn your clothes? Let him now come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. And so Naaman came with the horses and with his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall come to you, and you shall be clean. But Naaman was angry, and went away. And he said, Behold, I said within myself, He will surely come out to me, and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place, and recover the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? And so he turned and went away in a rage. And his servants came near and spoke to him, and said, My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much rather than when he says to you, Wash and be clean? Then he went down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and he came and stood before him, and said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. Now therefore I pray you, take a blessing from your servant. But he said, As the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. And Naaman said, I pray you, shall there not then be given to your servant 2 mules burdened of earth? For your servants will from now on offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord. In this thing may the Lord pardon your servant, that when my master was bowing in the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leaned upon my hand, and I bowed myself in the house of Rimmon, for my bowing down in the house of Rimmon, may the Lord pardon your servant in this thing. And he said to him, Go in peace. And so he went away from him a little way. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, Behold, my master has spared Naaman the Syrian, in not receiving at his hand that which he brought. But as the Lord lives, I will run after him, and take something from him. So Gehazi followed after Naaman. And when Naaman saw him running after him, he lighted down from the chariot to meet him. And he said, Is all well? And he said, All is well. My master has sent me, saying, Behold, even now there have come to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. I pray you, give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing. And Naaman said, Be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 changes of clothing. And he laid them upon 2 of his servants, and they carried them before him. And when he had come to the tower, he took them from their hand, and stowed them in the house. And he let the men go, and they departed. But he went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said to him, Where do you come from, Gehazi? And he said, Your servant did not go anywhere. And he said to him, Did not my heart go with you, when the man turned again from his chariot to meet you? Is it a time to receive money and to receive clothing, and olive yards and vineyards, and sheep and oxen, and men servants, and maidservants? And therefore the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you, and to your seed forever. And he went out from his presence, as a leper, white as snow. Chapter 6. 2 Kings chapter 6. And the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, Behold now, the place where we live with you is too small for us. We pray you, let us go unto Jordan, and let each man take a beam from there, and let us make us a place there, where we may dwell. And he answered, Go. And one said, Be content, I pray you, and go with your servants. And he answered them, I will go. And so he went with them, and when they came to Jordan, they cut down wood. But as one was felling a log, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried and said, Alas, master, for it was borrowed. And the man of God said, Where did it fall? And he showed him the place. And he cut down a stick and threw it in there, and the iron swam. And then he said, Take it up unto you. And he put out his hand and took it. Then the king of Syria warred against Israel, and took counsel with his servants, saying, In such and such a place shall be my camp. And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, Beware that you do not pass such a place, for the Syrians have come down there. And the king of Israel sent to the place which the man of God told him and warned him of, and saved himself there, not once nor twice. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was full of trouble for this thing, and he called his servants and said to them, Will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, None, my lord, O king. But Elisha the prophet, who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. And he said, Go and spy where he is, so that I may send and bring him. And it was told him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. And therefore he sent there horses and chariots and a great army. And they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God had risen early, and had gone forth, behold, an army surrounded the city, both with horses and chariots. And his servants said to him, Alas, my master, what shall we do? And he answered, Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed and said, I pray thee, Lord, open his eyes, so that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. And when they had come down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord, and said, I pray thee, strike this people with blindness. And he struck them with blindness, according to the word of Elisha. And Elisha said to them, This is not the way, neither is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria, and when they had come into Samaria, it came to pass that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men, so that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the middle of Samaria. And when he saw them, the king of Israel said to Elisha, My father, shall I strike them? Shall I strike them? And he answered, You shall not strike them. Would you strike those whom you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Set bread and water before them, so that they may eat and drink and go to their master. And he prepared a great feast for them. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master. And so the bands of Syria came no more into the lands of Israel. And after this Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his army, and went up and laid siege to Samaria. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, and the fourth part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. And as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman to him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If the Lord does not help you, from where shall I help you? Out of the barn floor, or out of the winepress? And the king said to her, What ails you? And she said, This woman said to me, Give your son, so that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. And so we boiled my son and ate him. And I said to her on the other day, Give your son so that we may eat him. But she has hidden her son. And when the king heard the words of the woman, he tore his clothes, and he passed by upon the wall. And the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth inside upon his flesh. And then he said, May God do so, and more also to me, if the head of Elisha's son of Shaphat shall stand on him this day. But Elisha sat in his house, and the elders sat with him. And the king sent a man from before him. But before the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, Do you see how this son of a murderer has sent to take away my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door, and hold him fast at the door. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him? And while he still talked with them, behold, the messenger came down to him. And he said, Behold, this evil is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer? Chapter 7. Then Elisha said, Hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, Tomorrow, about this time, a measure of fine flour shall be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, in the gate of Samaria. Then a woman upon whose hand the king leaned answered the man of God, and said, Behold, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, then this thing might be. And he said, Behold, you shall see it with your eyes, but you shall not eat of it. And there were 4 men who were lepers in the entering in of the gate, and they said one to another, Why do we sit here until we die? If we say we will enter into the city, then the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. And if we still sit here, we shall also die. Now therefore come, and let us fall to the army of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall live, and if they kill us, we shall only die. And they rose up in the twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians. And when they had come to the outermost part of the camp of Syria, behold, no man was there. For the Lord had made the army of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots, and a noise of horses, and the noise of a great army. And they had said one to another, Lo, the king of Israel has hired the kings of the Hittites, and the kings of the Egyptians against us to come upon us. Therefore they arose and fled in the twilight, and left their tents and their horses and their asses, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life. And when these lepers came to the outermost part of the camp, they went in to one tent, and ate and drank, and carried silver and gold and clothing from there, and went and hid it. And they came again and entered into another tent, and carried from there, and went and hid it. Then they said to one another, We are not doing right. This day is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. If we stay until the morning light, some punishment will come upon us. Now therefore come, so that we may go and tell the king's household. And so they came and called unto the porter of the city, and they told them, saying, We come to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there is no man there, neither voice of man, but horses tied and asses tied, and the tents as they were. And he called the porters, and they told it to the king's house inside. And the king arose in the night, and said to his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we are hungry, therefore they have gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the fields, saying, When they come out of the city, we shall catch them alive, and get into the city. And one of his servants answered and said, I pray you, let some take 5 of the horses which remain, which are left in the city. Behold, they are like all the multitude of Israel that are left in it. Behold, they are even as all the multitude of the Israelites that are consumed. And let us send and see. They therefore took 2 chariot horses. And the king sent after the army of the Syrians, saying, Go and see. And they went after them to Jordan, and lo, all the way was full of clothing and vessels which the Syrians had thrown away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. The people went out and spoiled the tents of the Syrians. And so a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. And the king appointed the Lord upon whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. And the people trampled upon him in the gate, and he died, as the man of God had said, who spoke when the king came down to him. And the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, and a measure of fine flour for a shekel. It shall be tomorrow about this time in the gate of Samaria. And that Lord answered the man of God, and said, Now behold, if that Lord should make windows in heaven, then such a thing might be. And he said, Behold, you shall see it with your eyes, but you shall not eat of it. And so it did happen to him, for the people trampled upon him in the gate, and he died. Chapter 8. 2 Kings chapter 8. Then Elisha spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise and go, you and your household, and live wherever you can live. For the Lord has called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years. And the woman arose and did what the saying of the man of God was. And she went with her household and lived in the land of the Philistines 7 years. And at the end of the 7 years the woman returned out of the land of the Philistines, and she went forth to cry to the king for her house and for her land. And the king talked with Gehazi the servant of the man of God, saying, I pray you, tell me all the great things which Elisha has done. And as he was telling the king how he had restored a dead body to life, behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life cried to the king for the house and for her land. And Gehazi said, My lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elisha restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. And so the king appointed to her a certain officer, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of the field, since the day when she left the land, even until now. And Elisha came to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad the king of Syria was sick. And they told him, saying, The man of God has come here. And the king said unto Hazael, Take a present in your hand, and go to meet the man of God, and ask of the Lord by him, saying, Shall I recover of this disease? And so Hazael went to meet him, and took a present with him, even of every good thing of Damascus, 40 camels' burden, and came and stood before him, and said, Your servant Ben-Hadad king of Syria has sent me to you, saying, Shall I recover from this disease? And Elisha said to him, Go and say to him, You may certainly recover. However, the Lord has showed me that he shall surely die. And he settled his face steadfastly until he was ashamed. And the man of God wept. And Hazael said, Why does my Lord weep? And he answered, Because I know the evil which you will do to the children of Israel. You will set their strongholds on fire, you will kill their young men with a sword, and will dash their children, and rip up their women with child. And Hazael said, What, is your servant a dog, that he should do this great thing? And Elisha answered, The Lord has showed me that you shall be king over Syria. And so he departed from Elisha, and came to his master, who said to him, What did Elisha say to you? And he answered, He told me that you would surely recover. And on the next day he took a thick cloth, and dipped it in water, and spread it upon his face, so that he died. And Hazael reigned in his stead. And in the 5th year of Jehoram the son of Ahab king of Israel, Jehoshaphat being then king of Judah, Jehoram the son of Jehoshaphat king of Judah began to reign. He was 32 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem, and he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, as the house of Ahab did, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for David his servant's sake, as he had promised him to give him always a light, and to his children. In his days Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah, and made a king over themselves. And so Jehoram went over to Zair, and all the chariots with him. And he rose by night, and struck the Edomites, who were all around him, and the captains of the chariots, and the people fled into their tents. Yet Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah unto this day. Then Libnah revolted at the same time, and the rest of the acts of Jehoram, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Jehoram slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Hazael his son reigned in his stead. And in the 12th year of Jehoram the son of Ahab king of Israel, Ahaziah the son of Jehoram king of Judah began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri, king of Israel. And he walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, and did evil in the sight of the Lord, as did the house of Ahab. For he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. And he went with Jehoram the son of Ahab to the war against Hazael king of Syria in Ramoth of Gilead. And the Syrians wounded Jehoram, and King Jehoram went back to be healed in Jezreel from the wounds which the Syrians had given him in Ramoth, when he fought against Hazael the king of Syria. And Ahaziah the son of Jehoram king of Judah went down to see Jehoram the son of Ahab in Jezreel, because he was sick. Chapter 9, 2 Kings chapter 9. And Elisha the prophet called one of the children of the prophets, and said to him, Bind up your loins, and take this box of oil in your hand, and go to Ramoth in Gilead. And when you come there, find Jehu the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in and make him rise up from among his brothers, and take him to an inner room. Then take the box of oil, and pour it upon his head, and say, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed you king over Israel. Then open the door, and flee, and do not stay. And so the young man, even the young man the prophet, went to Ramoth in Gilead. When he came, behold, the captains of the army were sitting, and he said, I have an errand to you, O captain. And Jehu said, Unto which one of us? And he said, To you, O captain. And he arose and went into the house, and he poured the oil upon his head, and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed you king over the people of the Lord, over Israel, and you shall strike the house of Ahab your master, so that I may avenge the blood of my servants the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord, at the hand of Jezebel. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish. And I will cut off from Ahab every one that waters against the wall, and every one that is shut up and left in Israel. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah. And the dogs shall eat Jezebel in a part of Jezreel, and none shall be there to bury her. And then he opened the door and fled. Then Jehu came forth to the servants of his lord, and said to him, Is all well? Why did this mad fellow come to you? And he said to them, You know the man, and what he had to say? And they said, It is false. Tell us now. And he said, This and this he spoke to me, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed you king over Israel. Then they hurried, and each man took his garment, and put it under him on the top of the stairs, and blew with trumpets, saying, Jehu is king. And so Jehu the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, plotted against Jehoram. Now Jehoram was watching Ramoth in Gilead, he and all of Israel, because of Hazael, the king of Syria. But King Jehoram had returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him when he fought with Hazael, the king of Syria. And Jehu said, If it is your minds, then let no one go forth nor escape out of the city to go to tell it in Jezreel. And so Jehu rode in the chariot and went to Jezreel, for Jehoram lay there. And Ahaziah, king of Judah, had come down to see Jehoram. And there stood a watchman on the tower in Jezreel, and he saw the company of Jehu as he came, and said, I see a company. And Jehoram said, Take a horseman, and send to meet them, and let him say, Is it peace? And so there went one on horseback to meet him, and said, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And Jehu said, What do you have to do with peace? Turn behind me. And the watchman reported, saying, The messenger came to them, but he does not come again. And then he sent out a second man on horseback, who came to him and said, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And he answered, What do you have to do with peace? Turn behind me. And the watchman reported, saying, He came up to them, but does not come again. And the driving is like the driving of Jehu the son of Nimshi, for he drives furiously. And Jehoram said, Make ready. And his chariot was made ready. And Jehoram king of Israel and Ahaziah king of Judah went out, each in his own chariot. And they went out against Jehu and met him in the portion of Naboth in Jezreel. And when Jehoram saw Jehu, he said, Is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, What peace, so long as fornication, the fornications of your mother Jezebel, and her witchcrafts are so many? And Jehoram turned his hand and fled, and said to Ahaziah, This is treachery, O Ahaziah. And Jehu drew a bow with his full strength and struck Jehoram between his arms. And the arrow went out at his heart, and he sank down in his chariot. Then Jehu said to Bidkar his captain, Take him up, and throw him in the portion of the field of Naboth of Jezreel. For remember that when you and I rode together after Ahab his father, the Lord laid this burden upon him. Surely yesterday I have seen the blood of Naboth, and the blood of his son, saith the Lord. And I will repay you in this portion, saith the Lord. Now therefore take him and throw him into the portion according to the word of the Lord. And when Ahaziah the king of Judah saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house. And Jehu followed after him and said, Strike him also in the chariot. And they did so at the going up to Gur, which is by Ibbilam. And he fled to Megiddo and died there. And his servants carried him in a chariot to Jerusalem and buried him in his tomb with his fathers in the city of David. And in the 11th year of Jehoram the son of Ahab, Ahaziah began to reign over Judah. And when Jehu came to Jezreel, Jezebel heard, and she painted her face and adorned her head, and looked out at the window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, Did Zimri, who slew his master, have peace? And he lifted up his face to the window and said, Who is on my side? Who? And 2 or 3 eunuchs looked out at him. And he said, Throw her down. And so they threw her down. And some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses. And he trampled her under foot. And when he'd come in, he ate and drank, and said, Go now, see the cursed woman, and bury her, for she is a king's daughter. And they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands. Therefore they came again and told him, and he said, This is the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, In the portion of Jezreel the dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the dead body of Jezebel shall be as dung upon the face of the field in the portion of Jezreel, so that they shall not say, This is Jezebel. Chapter 10, 2 Kings chapter 10. And Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria, and Jehu wrote letters and sent them to Samaria to the rulers of Jezreel, to the elders, and to those who brought up Ahab's children, saying, Now as soon as this letter comes to you, since your master's sons are with you, and there are with you chariots and horses, also a fenced city and armor, even look for the best and fittest of your master's sons, and set him on his father's throne, and fight for your master's house. But they were exceedingly afraid, and said, Behold, 2 kings did not stand before him. How then shall we stand? And he who was over the house, and he who was over the city, the elders also and the guardians, said to Jehu, saying, We are your servants, and will do all that you shall bid us. We will not make any king do what is good in your eyes. And then he wrote a letter the second time to them, saying, If you are mine, and if you will listen to my voice, take the heads of the men who are your master's sons, and come to me to Jezreel by this time tomorrow. Now the king's sons, 70 persons, were with the great men of the city who brought them up. And when the letter came to them, they took the king's sons and killed them, 70 persons, and put their heads in baskets and sent them to him in Jezreel. And there came a messenger and told him, saying, They have brought the heads of the king's sons. And he said, Lay them in 2 heaps at the entering in of the gate until the morning. And in the morning it came to pass that he went out and stood and said to all the people, You are righteous. Behold, I plotted against my master and killed him. But who killed all these? Now know that there shall fall to the earth nothing of the word of the Lord, which the Lord spoke concerning the house of Ahab. For the Lord has done that which he spoke by his servant Elijah. And so Jehu killed all that remained of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, and all his great men and his familiar friends and his priests, until he left him none remaining. And he arose and departed and came to Samaria. And as he was at the shearing house in the way, Jehu came with the brothers of Ahaziah, the king of Judah, and said, Who are you? And they answered, We are the brothers of Ahaziah, and we go down to greet the children of the king and the children of the queen. And he said, Take them alive. And they took them alive and killed them in the pit at the shearing house, 42 men. Neither did he leave any of them. And when he had departed from there, he found Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, coming to meet him. And he greeted him and said to him, Is your heart right, as my heart is with your heart? And Jehonadab answered, It is. If it is so, give me your hand. And he gave him his hand. And he took him up into the chariot. And he said, Come with me, and see my zeal for the Lord. And so they made him ride in his chariot. And when he came to Samaria, he killed all that remained to Ahab in Samaria, until he had destroyed him, according to the saying of the Lord, which he spoke to Elijah. And Jehu gathered all the people together, and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little, but Jehu shall serve him much. Now therefore call to me all the prophets of Baal, all his servants, and all his priests. Let no one be lacking, for I have a great sacrifice to do to Baal. Whoever shall be lacking, he shall not live. But Jehu did it subtly, to the end that he might destroy the worshippers of Baal. And Jehu said, Call a solemn feast for Baal, and they called it. And Jehu sent through all Israel, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left who did not come. They came into the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was full from one end to the other. And he said to him, Who was over the robe room? Bring out the robes for all the worshippers of Baal. And he brought them out. And Jehu went to Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, into the house of Baal, and he said to the worshippers of Baal, Search and look, that there may not be here with you any of the servants of the Lord, but only the worshippers of Baal. And when they went in to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings, Jehu appointed 80 men outside, and said, If any of the men whom I have brought into your hand escapes, his life shall be for the life of him. And as soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering, Jehu said to the guard and to the captains, Now go in and kill them. Do not let any come out. And they struck them with the edge of the sword. And the guard and the captains threw them out. And they went to the city, to the house of Baal. And they brought forth the images out of the house of Baal, and burned them. And they broke down the image of Baal, and broke down the house of Baal, and made it a sewer house until this day. And so Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel. However, Jehu did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, going after them the golden calves which were in Bethel and in Dan. And the Lord said to Jehu, Because you have done well in doing what is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab, according to all that was in my heart, your children of the 4th generation shall sit on the throne of Israel. But Jehu took no heed to walk in the law of the Lord, God of Israel, with all his heart, for he did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, who made Israel to sin. And in those days the Lord began to cut Israel short. And Hazael struck them in all the coast of Israel, from Jordan toward the rising of the sun, all the land of Gilead, the men of Gad and of Reuben and of Manasseh, from Aurora, which is by the river Arnon, even Gilead and Bashan. Now the rest of the acts of Jehu, and all that he did, and all his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehu slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria. And Jehoahaz his son reigned in his stead. And the time that Jehu reigned over Israel and Samaria was 28 years. Chapter 11, 2 Kings, chapter 11. And when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the seed of the kingdom. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Jehoram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash the son of Ahaziah, and stole him from among the king's sons which were killed. And they hid him from Athaliah in the bedroom, him and his nurse, so that he was not killed. And he was hidden with her in the house of the Lord 6 years. And Athaliah reigned over the land. And the 7th year Jehoiada sent and brought the rulers over the hundreds with the captains and the guards, and brought them to him into the house of the Lord. And he made a covenant with them, and took an oath from them in the house of the Lord, and showed them the king's sons. And he commanded them, saying, This is the thing that you shall do. A third part of you who enter in on the Sabbath shall be keepers of the watch of the king's house. And a third part shall be at the gate of Sur, and a third part shall be at the gate behind the guard. And so they shall keep the watch of the house, so that it may not be broken down. And 2 parts of you who go forth on the Sabbath, even they shall keep the watch of the house of the Lord around the king. And you shall surround the king, every man with his weapons in his hands. And he who comes inside the ranks, let him be killed. And you be with the king as he goes out and as he comes in. And the captains over the hundreds did according to all that Jehoiada the priest commanded. And each one of them took his man that was to come in on the Sabbath with them, that should go out on the Sabbath, and come to Jehoiada the priest. And the priest gave King David's spears and shields, which were in the temple of the Lord, to the captains over the hundreds. And the guard stood, each man with his weapons in his hand, around the king, from the right corner of the temple to the left corner of the temple, by the altar in the temple. And he brought forth the king's sons, and put the crown upon him, and he gave him the testimony. And they made him king and anointed him, and they clapped their hands and said, Let the king live. And when Athaliah heard the noise of the guard and of the people, she came to the people into the temple of the Lord. And when she looked, behold, the king stood by a pillar, as usually was done, and the princes and the trumpeters were by the king. And all the people of the land rejoiced and blew with trumpets. And Athaliah tore her clothes, and cried, Treason, treason! But Jehoiada the priest commanded the captains of the hundreds, the officers of the armies, and said to them, Take her out between the ranks, and let the one who follows her kill her with the sword. For the priest had said, Let her not be slain in the house of the Lord. And they laid hands on her, and she went by the way which the horses came into the king's house, and she was killed there. And Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people, that they should be the Lord's people, also between the king and the people. And all the people of the land went into the house of Baal and broke it down. And they broke down his altars and his images completely in pieces. And they killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. And the priest appointed officers over the house of the Lord. And he took the rulers over hundreds, and the captains and the guards, and all the people of the land, and they brought the king down from the house of the Lord, and came by the way of the gate of the guard to the king's house. And he stood on the throne of the kings. And all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet. And they killed Athaliah with the sword beside the king's house. And Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign. Chapter 12. 2 Kings chapter 12. And in the 7th year of Jehu, Joash began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. And his mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba. And Joash did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all his days, in which Jehoiada the priest instructed him. But the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense in the high places. And Joash said to the priest, All the money from the things dedicated unto God, which is brought into the house of the Lord, the money from every one who passes, the money from the persons for whom each man is taxed, and all the money that comes into any man's heart to bring to the house of the Lord, let the priest take it to themselves, each man from those who knows. And let them repair the breaks in the house, wherever any break shall be found. But it happened in the 23rd year of King Joash, the priest had not repaired the breaks of the house. Then King Joash called for Jehoiada the priest, and the other priest, and said to them, Why are you not repairing the breaks of the house? Now therefore take no money from those who know, but deliver it for the break in the house. And the priest agreed to take no money from the people, neither to repair the breaks of the house. But Jehoiada the priest took a chest, and bored a hole in the lid of it, and he set it beside the altar on the right side as one comes into the house of the Lord. And the priest who kept the door put into it all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. And when they saw that there was much money in the chest, it happened that the king's scribe and the high priest came up, and they put it in bags and counted the money that was found in the house of the Lord. And they gave the money which was counted into the hands of those who did the work, who had the oversight of the house of the Lord. They laid it out to the carpenters and builders who worked upon the house of the Lord, and to masons and cutters of stone, and to buy timber and cut stone to repair the breaks of the house of the Lord, and for all that went forth for the house to repair it. However, there were no bowls of silver, snuffers, basins, trumpets, or any vessels of gold, or vessels of silver made for the house of the Lord from the money which was brought into the house of the Lord. But they gave that to the workmen, and repaired the house of the Lord with it. Moreover, they did not make an accounting with the men into whose hands they delivered the money to be given to the workmen, for they dealt faithfully. The trespass money and the sin money was not brought into the house of the Lord, it was the priests. Then Hazael, king of Syria, went up and fought against Gath, and took it. And Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. And Joash, king of Judah, took all the holy things which Jehoshaphat and Jehoram and Ahaziah his fathers, kings of Judah, had dedicated, and his own holy things, and all the gold which was found in the treasures of the house of the Lord, and in the king's house, and sent it to Hazael, king of Syria, and he went away from Jerusalem. And the rest of the acts of Joash and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And his servants arose and made a plot, and they killed Joash in the house of Millo, which goes down to Silla. For Jozachar, the son of Shimeath, and Jehozabad, the son of Shomer, his servants, struck him, and he died. And they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. And Amaziah his son reigned in his stead. 2 Kings chapter 13. Now in the 23rd year of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz the son of Jehu began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and reigned 17 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, and followed the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. And he did not depart from them. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of Hazael king of Syria, and into the hand of Benhadad the son of Hazael all their days. And Jehoahaz sought the Lord, and the Lord listened to him, for he saw the oppression of Israel, because the king of Syria oppressed them. And the Lord gave Israel a deliverer, so that they went out from under the Syrians. And the children of Israel lived in their tents as before. Nevertheless they did not depart from the sins of the house of Jeroboam, who made Israel to sin, but walked in them. And also the grove in Samaria stood, for he had not left a people remaining to Jehoahaz, but only 50 horsemen and 10 chariots and 10,000 footmen, for the king of Syria had destroyed them, and had made them like the dust at threshing time. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoahaz, and all that he did, and his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehoahaz slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria. And Jehoash his son reigned in his stead. And in the 37th year of Joash king of Judah, Jehoash the son of Jehoahaz began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and reigned 16 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, but he walked in them. And the rest of the acts of Jehoash, and all that he did, and his might, which he fought against Amaziah king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehoash slept with his fathers, and Jeroboam sat upon his throne. And Jehoash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Now Elisha had fallen sick of his sickness, of which he was about to die. And Jehoash the king of Israel came down to him and wept over his face. And he said, O my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen of it. And Elisha said to him, Take bow and arrows. And he took a bow and arrows to himself. And he said to the king of Israel, Put your hand upon the bow. And he put his hand upon it, and Elisha put his hands upon the king's hands. And he said, Open the window eastward. And he opened it. Then Elisha said, Shoot. And he shot. And he said, The arrow of the Lord's deliverance, and the arrow of deliverance from Syria. For you shall strike the Syrians in Aphek, until you have crushed them. And he said, Take the arrows. And he took them, and he said to the king of Israel, Strike upon the ground. And he struck 3 times and stopped. And the man of God was angry with him, and said, You should have stricken 5 or 6 times. Then you would have stricken Syria, until you had crushed it. But now you shall strike Syria only 3 times. And Elisha died, and they buried him. And the bands of the Moabites invaded the land at the first of the year. And as they were burying a man, it came to pass that, behold, they spied a band. And they threw the man into the grave of Elisha. And when the man went down and touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood up on his feet. And Hazael oppressed Israel all the days of Jehoahaz. And the Lord was gracious to him, and had pity on him, and had respect to them, because of his covenant with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And he would not destroy them, neither did he cast them from his presence. And so Hazael king of Syria died, and his son Ben-Hadad reigned in his stead. And Jehoash the son of Jehoahaz returned and took out of the hand of Ben-Hadad the son of Hazael the cities which he had taken out of the hand of Jehoahaz his father by war. And Jehoash beat him 3 times and recovered the cities of Israel. 2 Kings chapter 14. Now in the 2nd year of Jehoash the son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, Amaziah the son of Joash king of Judah reigned, and he was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jehoaddan of Jerusalem. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, yet not like David his father. He did according to all the things that Joash his father did. However, the high places were not taken away, and the people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. And as soon as the kingdom was confirmed in his hand, it came to pass that he killed his servants who had slain his father the king. But he did not kill the children of the servants, according to that which is written in the book of the law of Moses, in which the Lord commanded, saying, The fathers shall not be put to death for the children, nor shall the children be put to death for the fathers, but every man shall be put to death for his own sin. He killed 10,000 of Edom in the valley of Salt, and he took Selah by war, and called the name of it Joktheel until this day. Then Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash the son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, king of Israel, saying, Come, let us look one another in the face. And Jehoash the king of Israel sent to Amaziah king of Judah, saying, The thistle which was in Lebanon sent to the cedar which was in Lebanon, saying, Give your daughter to my son for a wife. And there passed by a wild beast which was in Lebanon, and trampled the thistle down. You have indeed stricken Edom, and your heart has lifted you up. Rejoice and stay home. For why should you meddle in your harm, so that you should fall, you and Judah with you? But Amaziah would not hear. Therefore Jehoash king of Israel went up, and he and Amaziah king of Judah looked one another in the face at Beth-shemesh, which belongs to Judah. And Judah was put to the worse before Israel, and every man fled to his tent. And Jehoash king of Israel took Amaziah king of Judah, the son of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, at Beth-shemesh, and he came to Jerusalem, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem from the gate of Ephraim to the corner gate 400 cubits. And he took all the gold and the silver and all the vessels which were found in the house of the Lord, and in the treasures of the king's house, and hostages, and returned to Samaria. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoash, which he did, and his might, and how he fought with Amaziah king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehoash slept with his fathers, and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. And Jeroboam his son reigned in his stead. And Amaziah the son of Joash king of Judah lived after the death of Jehoash son of Jehoahaz king of Israel 15 years. And the rest of the acts of Amaziah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? Now they made a plot against him at Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent after him to Lachish, and killed him there. And they brought him on horses, and was buried at Jerusalem with his fathers in the city of David. And all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. And he built Elath, and restored it to Judah, after the king slept with his fathers. And in the 15th year of Amaziah the son of Joash king of Judah, Jeroboam the son of Jehoash king of Israel began to reign in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. And he restored the coast of Israel from the entering of Hamath to the sea of the plain, according to the word of the Lord God of Israel, which he spoke by the hand of his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai the prophet, who was from Gath-hepher. For the Lord saw that the affliction of Israel was very bitter, for there was not any shut up, nor any left, nor any helper for Israel. And the Lord did not say that he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, but he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam the son of Jehoash. Now the rest of the acts of Jeroboam, and all that he did, and his might, how he warred, and how he recovered Damascus and Hamath, which belonged to Judah, for Israel, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jeroboam slept with his fathers, with the kings of Israel, and his son Zechariah reigned in his stead. Chapter 15, 2 Kings chapter 15. Now in the 27th year of Jeroboam king of Israel, Uzziah son of Amaziah king of Judah began to reign. He was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jecholiah of Jerusalem. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah had done, except that the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and burned incense in the high places. And the Lord struck the king so that he was a leper until the day of his death, and lived in a separate house. And the king's son Jotham was over the house, judging the people of the land. And the rest of the acts of Uzziah, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And so Uzziah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David, and his son Jotham reigned in his stead. And in the 38th year of Uzziah, king of Judah, Zechariah the son of Jeroboam reigned over Israel in Samaria 6 months. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, as his fathers had done. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. And Shallum, the son of Jabesh, conspired against him. And he struck him before the people, and killed him, and reigned in his stead. And the rest of the acts of Zechariah, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. This was the word of the Lord which he spoke to Jehu, saying, Your sons shall sit on the throne of Israel until the 4th generation. And so it came to pass. And Shallum the son of Jabesh began to reign in the 39th year of Uzziah king of Judah. And he reigned in Samaria only 1 month. For Menahem the son of Gadai went up from Tirzah, and came to Samaria, and struck Shallum the son of Jabesh in Samaria, and he killed him, and reigned in his stead. And the rest of the acts of Shallum, and the conspiracy which he made, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. Then Menahem struck Tiphsah, and all that were in it, and the borders of it, from Tirzah. Because they did not open to him, therefore he struck it. He ripped up in it all the women who were with the child. And in the 39th year of Azariah king of Judah, Menahem the son of Gadai began to reign over Israel. And he reigned 10 years in Samaria. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin all his days. And Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver, so that his hand might be with him to confirm the kingdom in his hand. And Menahem took the money from Israel, from all the mighty men of wealth, 50 shekels of silver from each man, to give to the king of Assyria. And so the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. And the rest of the acts of Menahem and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Menahem slept with his fathers, and Pekahiah his son reigned in his stead. And in the 50th year of Uzziah king of Judah, Pekahiah the son of Menahem began to reign over Israel in Samaria. And he reigned 2 years, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, but Pekah the son of Remaliah, a captain of his, conspired against him and struck him in Samaria, in the palace of the king's house, with Argob and Ariah, and 50 men from Gilead with him. And he killed him and reigned in his stead. And the rest of the acts of Pekahiah, and all that he did, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. And in the 52nd year of Uzziah king of Judah, Pekah the son of Remaliah began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 20 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. And in the days of Pekah king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser king of Assyria came and took Ijon, and Abel-Beth-Maacah, and Janoah, and Kedesh, and Hazor, and Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried them away captive to Assyria. And Hoshea the son of Elah made a plot against Pekah the son of Remaliah, and he struck him and killed him and reigned in his stead, in the 20th year of Jotham the son of Uzziah. And the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. And in the 2nd year of Pekah the son of Remaliah king of Israel, Jotham the son of Uzziah king of Judah began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. He did according to all that his father Uzziah had done. However, the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and burned incense in the high places. He built the higher gate of the house of the Lord, and the rest of the acts of Jotham and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And in those days the Lord began to send Rezin, the king of Syria, against Judah, and also Pekah, the son of Remaliah. And Jotham slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father, and his son Ahaz reigned in his stead. 2 Kings chapter 16. 2 Kings chapter 16. Now in the 17th year of Pekah the son of Remaliah, Ahaz the son of Jotham king of Judah began to reign. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and he did not do that which was right in the sight of the Lord his God, like David his father. But he walked in the way of the kings of Israel. Yes, and he made his son to pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed and burned incense in the high places and on the hills, and under every tree. And Rezin king of Syria and Pekah son of Remaliah king of Israel came up to Jerusalem for war. And they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. At that time Rezin king of Syria recovered Elath to Syria, and drove the Jews from Elath. And the Syrians came to Elath and lived there until this day. And so Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Syria, and out of the hand of the king of Israel, who rise up against me. And Ahaz took the silver and gold which was found in the house of the Lord, and in the treasures of the king's house, and sent a present to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria listened to him, for the king of Assyria went up against Damascus, and took it. And he carried it away captive to Kir, and killed Rezin. And King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, and he saw an altar which was at Damascus. And King Ahaz sent to Urijah the priest the pattern of the altar, and the form of it, according to all the workmanship of it. And Urijah the priest built an altar according to all that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus. And so Urijah the priest made it, for the time when King Ahaz came from Damascus. And when the king had come from Damascus, the king saw the altar, and the king approached to the altar, and offered on it. And he burned his burnt offering and his meal offering, and poured his drink offering, and sprinkled the blood of his peace offerings upon the altar. And he also brought the brass altar which was before the Lord, from the forefront of the house, from between the altar and the house of the Lord, and put it on the north side of the altar. And King Ahaz commanded Urijah the priest, saying, Upon the great altar burn the morning offering and the evening meal offering, and the king's burnt sacrifice and his meal offering, with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, and their meal offerings, and also their drink offerings, and sprinkle all the blood of the burnt offerings upon it, and all the blood of the sacrifice. And the brass altar shall be for me to inquire by. And so Urijah the priest did, according to all that King Ahaz commanded. And King Ahaz cut off the borders of the bases, and removed the laver from off them. And he took down the sea from off the brass oxen which were under it, and put it upon a pavement of stones. And the covered way for the Sabbath which they had built in the house, and the king's entry outside, he turned from the house of the Lord for the king of Assyria. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaz which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Ahaz slept with his fathers in the city of David, and his son Hezekiah reigned in his stead. Chapter 17, 2 Kings chapter 17. Now in the 12th year of Ahaz king of Judah, Hoshea the son of Elah began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not like the kings of Israel who were before him. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against him, and Hoshea became his servant, and gave him taxes. And the king of Assyria found treachery in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and had brought no taxes to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up, and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land, and he went up to Samaria, and besieged it 3 years. Now in the 9th year of Hoshea the king of Assyria took Samaria, and carried Israel away into Assyria, and he placed them in Halah, in Habor, by the river Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. And so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which the heathens had made. And the children of Israel secretly did things that were not right against the Lord their God, and they built high places in all their cities for themselves, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And they set themselves up images and groves for themselves in every high place, and under every green tree. And they burned incense in all the high places, as the heathen whom the Lord carried away from before them had done. And they worked wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. And they served idols, of which the Lord had said to them, Ye shall not do this thing. Yet the Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and all the seers, saying, Turn from your evil ways, and keep my commandments, and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your father, and which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. But they would not hear, but hardened their necks, like the neck of their fathers who did not believe in the Lord their God. And they rejected his statutes and his covenants, which he made with them, and with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity, and became vain. And they went after the heathen who were round about them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like them. And they left all the commandments of the Lord their God, and made molten images, 2 calves for themselves. And they made a grove, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire. And they used divination, enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel, and removed them from out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. Only Judah did not keep the commandments of the Lord their God, but walked in the statutes which Israel made. And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel, and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of the spoilers, until he had cast them out of his sight. For he tore Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. And Jeroboam drove Israel away from following the Lord, and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam which he did, and they did not depart from them, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets. And so Israel was carried away out of their own land unto Assyria, even until this day. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria, and lived in the cities of it. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there, that they did not fear the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, who killed them. Therefore they spoke to the king of Assyria, saying, The nations which you have removed, and placed in the cities of Samaria, do not know the manner of the God of the land. Therefore he has sent lions among them, and behold, they kill them, because they do not know the way of the God of the land. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, Carry there one of the priests whom you brought from there, and let them go and live there, and let him teach them the way of the God of the land. Then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and lived in Bethel, and he taught them how they should fear the Lord. However, every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places, which the Samaritans had made, every nation in their cities in which they lived. And the men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima, and the Avites made Nibhaz and Tartak, and the Sepharvites burned their children in fire to Adramelech and Anamelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. And so they feared the Lord, and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of the high places, who sacrificed for them in the houses of the high places. And they feared the Lord, and served their own gods, according to the custom of the nations whom they carried away from there. Until this day they do according to their former ways. They do not fear the Lord, neither do they follow after their statutes, or after their ordinances, or after the law and the commandments which the Lord commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel, with whom the Lord had made a covenant, and charged them, saying, You shall not fear other gods, nor bow yourselves to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. But the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt with great power and a stretched out arm, you shall fear him, and you shall worship him, and ye shall do sacrifice to him. And the statutes and the ordinances and the law and the commandment which he wrote to you, you shall be careful to do forever. And you shall not fear other gods. And the covenant that I have made with you, you shall not forget. Neither shall you fear other gods, but you shall fear the Lord your God. And he shall deliver you out of the hand of your enemies. However, they did not listen, but they followed after their former ways. And so these nations feared the Lord, and served their graven images, both their children and their children's children, as their fathers did, and so they do until this day. Chapter 18, 2 Kings, chapter 18. Now in the 3rd year of Hoshea, a son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah, and he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that David his father did. And he removed the high places, and broke the images, and cut down the groves. And he broke in pieces the brass serpent which Moses had made, for until those days the children of Israel burned incense to it. And he called it Nehushtan. And he trusted in the Lord God of Israel, so that after him was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor any who were before him. For he clung to the Lord, and did not depart from following him, but kept his commandments which the Lord commanded Moses. And the Lord was with him, and he was blessed wherever he went. And he rebelled against the king of Assyria, and did not serve him. And he struck the Philistines to Gaza, and the borders of it, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And in the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria, and besieged it. And at the end of 3 years they took it, in the 6th year of Hezekiah, that is, the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel. In that year Samaria was taken. And the king of Assyria carried away Israel to Assyria, and put them in Halah, and in Habor, by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes, because they did not obey the voice of the Lord their God, but transgressed his covenant, and all that Moses the servant of the Lord commanded, and would not listen to them, nor do them. Now in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fenced cities of Judah, and took them. And Hezekiah king of Judah sent to the king of Assyria to Lachish, saying, I have offended. Return from me. Whatever you put upon me I will bear. And the king of Assyria appointed to Hezekiah king of Judah 300 talents of silver, and 30 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver which was found in the house of the Lord, and in the treasures of the king's house. And at that time Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord, and from the pillars which Hezekiah king of Judah had overlaid, and he gave them to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria sent Tartan, and Rabsaris, and Rabshakeh, and Lachish to King Hezekiah with a great army against Jerusalem. And they went up and came to Jerusalem, and when they had come up, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is in the highway of the fuller's field. And when they had called to the king, there came out to them Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder. And Rabshakeh said to them, Speak now to Hezekiah. Thus saith the great king, the king of Assyria, What hope is this in which you trust? Do you say that a mere word of the lips is wisdom, and strength for the war? Now on whom do you trust that you rebel against me? Now behold, you trust upon the staff of this bruised reed, upon Egypt, on which if a man leans, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh king of Egypt to all who trust on him. But if you say to me, We trust in Jehovah our God, is he not the one whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah has taken away, and has said to Judah and Jerusalem, You shall worship before this altar in Jerusalem? Now therefore I pray you give pledges to my lord the king of Assyria, and I will deliver 2,000 horses to you, if you are able on your part to set riders upon them. How then will you turn away the face of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put your trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Have I now come up against this place to destroy it without Jehovah? Jehovah said to me, Go up against this land and destroy it. Then Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, and Shebna, and Joah said to Rabshakeh, I pray you speak to your servants in the Syrian language, for we understand, and do not talk with us in the Jews' language, in the ears of the people who are on the wall. But Rabshakeh said to them, Has my master sent me to your master and to you to speak these words? Has he not sent me to the men who sit on the wall, so that they may eat their own dung and drink the water of their feet with it? Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language. And he spoke, saying, Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus saith the king, Do not let Hezekiah fool you, for he shall not be able to deliver you out of his hand. Neither let Hezekiah make you trust in Jehovah, saying, Jehovah will surely deliver us, and this city shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus saith the king of Assyria, Seek my favor by a present, and come out to me, and every man of you shall eat of his vine, and every one of you from his own fig tree, and every one shall drink the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own, a land of corn and wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive oil and honey, so that you may live and not die. And do not listen to Hezekiah when he deceives you, saying, Jehovah will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations at all delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Ivah? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hands? Who are they among all the gods of the countries who have delivered their country out of my hand, that Jehovah should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? But the people held their peace, and did not answer him a word, for the king's commandment was, saying, Do not answer him. Then Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn, and they told him the words of Rabshakeh. Chapter 19. 2 Kings, chapter 19. And when King Hezekiah heard, he tore his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth. And he went into the house of the Lord, and he sent Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and the elders of the priest, covered with sackcloth, to Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz. And they said to him, Thus saith Hezekiah, This day is a day of trouble and of rebuke and provocation, for the children have come to the birth, and there is no strength to bring forth. It may be the Lord your God will hear all the words of Rabshakeh, whom the king of Assyria his master has sent to reproach the living God. And perhaps he will reprove the words which the Lord your God has heard. Therefore lift up your prayer for the rest who are left. And so the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah. And Isaiah said to them, So you shall say to your master, Thus saith the Lord, Do not be afraid of the words which you have heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Behold, I will send a blast upon him, and he shall hear a rumor, and shall return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land. And so Rabshakeh returned, and he found the king of Assyria warring against Libnah, for he had heard that he had departed from Lachish. And when he heard, he said to Tahikah, the king of Ethiopia, Behold, he has come out to fight against you. He sent messengers again to Hezekiah, saying, So ye shall speak to Hezekiah king of Judah, saying, Do not let your God in whom you trust deceive you, saying, Jerusalem will not be delivered into the hand of the king of Assyria. Behold, you have heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all the lands by completely destroying them. And shall you be delivered? Have the gods of the nations delivered them, nations which my fathers have destroyed, Gozan and Haran and Rezeph, and the children of Eden who were in Thalasar? Where is the king of Hamath, and the king of Arpad, and the king of the city of Sepharvaim, and of Hena, and Iva? And Hezekiah received the letter from the hand of the messengers, and read it. And Hezekiah went up to the house of the Lord, and spread it before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed before the Lord, and said, O Lord God of Israel, who lives between the cherubims, Thou art the God, Thou alone, of all the kingdoms of the earth. Thou hast made heavens and earth. Lord, bow down thy ear, and hear, O Lord. Open thy eyes, and see, and hear the words of Sennacherib, who has sent him to taunt the living God. Truly, Lord, the kings of Assyria have destroyed the nations and their lands, and have thrown their gods into the fire, for they were no gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. Therefore they have destroyed them. Now therefore, O Lord our God, I beseech thee, save us out of his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that thou art the Lord God, and thou only. Then Isaiah the son of Amos sent to Hezekiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have heard that which you have prayed to me against Sennacherib, king of Assyria. This is the word that the Lord has spoken concerning him. The virgin, the daughter of Zion, has despised you and laughed you to scorn. The daughter of Jerusalem has shaken her head at you. Whom have you mocked and blasphemed? And against whom have you exalted your voice and lifted your eyes on high? Even against the Holy One of Israel. You have mocked the Lord by your messengers, and have said, With the multitude of my chariots I have come up to the height of the mountain, to the sides of Lebanon, and will cut down the tall cedar trees of it, the choice fir trees of it, and I will enter into the lodgings of its borders, into the forest and its fruitful field. I have dug and drunk strange waters, and with the sole of my feet I have dried up all the rivers of fenced places. Have you not heard? Long ago I have made it. In ancient times I fashioned it. Now I have brought it to pass, yea, it is done, that fortified cities should be laid waste into heaps of ruins. Therefore their people were of small power. They were fearful and put to shame. They were like the grass of the field, and like the green herb, like the grass on the housetops, and like grain blasted before it was grown up. But I know your sitting down, and your going out, and your coming in, and your rage against me. Because your rage against me and your noise has come into my ears, therefore I will put my hook in your nose, and my bridle in your lips, and I will turn you back by the way by which you came. And this shall be a sign to you. You shall eat this year such things as grow of themselves, and in the second year that which springs up of the same. And in the third year sow and reap and plant vineyards, and eat the fruits of them. And the remnant that has escaped of the house of Judah shall yet again take root downward, and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem shall go forth a remnant. And they who escape out of Mount Zion, the zeal of the Lord shall do this for them. Therefore thus saith the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, He shall not come into the city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shield, nor throw up a bank against it. By the way that he came, by the same he shall return, and shall not come into this city, says the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it for my own sake, and for my servant David's sake. And that night it came to pass that the angel of the Lord went out and struck 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when men arose early in the morning, behold, these were all dead bodies. And so Sennacherib king of Assyria departed, and he went and returned and lived at Nineveh. And as he was worshipping in the house of Nisroch his god, it came to pass that Adrammelech and Sharezer his sons struck him with a sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia, and Esarhaddon his son reigned in his stead. Chapter 20. We are reading from the second book of Kings. We begin reading now chapter 20. This is Family Bible Reading Fellowship. Each day at this time we open God's Word and read together. We invite you to read along with us. The 20th chapter of the second book of Kings. Now in those days Hezekiah was sick unto death. And the prophet Isaiah the son of Amos came to him and said to him, Thus saith the Lord, Set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. Then he turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord, saying, O Lord, I pray thee, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth, and with a sincere heart, and have done good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept with a great weeping. And before Isaiah had gone out into the middle of the court, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Return again, and tell Hezekiah the captain of my people, Thus saith the Lord, the God of David your father, I have heard your prayer, I have seen your tears. Behold, I will heal you. On the 3rd day you shall go up to the house of the Lord, and I will add 15 years to your days, and I will deliver you in this house out of the hand of the king of Assyria. And I will defend this city for my own sake, and for my servant David's sake. And Isaiah said, Take a lump of figs. And they took it and laid it on the boil, and he recovered. And Hezekiah said to Isaiah, What shall be the sign that the Lord will heal me, that I shall go up into the house of the Lord the 3rd day? And Isaiah said, You shall have this sign from the Lord, that the Lord will do the thing which he has spoken. Shall the shadow go forward 10 steps, or go back 10 steps? And Hezekiah answered, It is a light thing for the shadow to go down 10 steps. No, but let the shadow go backward 10 steps. And Isaiah the prophet cried unto the Lord, and he brought the shadow 10 steps backward, by which it had gone down on the steps of Ahaz. And at that time Berodach-Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he had heard that Hezekiah had been sick. And Hezekiah listened to him, and showed them all the house of his precious things, the silver and the gold and the spices and the precious ointments, and all the house of his jewels, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, which Hezekiah did not show them. Then Isaiah the prophet came to King Hezekiah, and said to him, What did these men say? And where did they come to you from? And Hezekiah said, They have come from a far country, from Babylon. And he said, What have they seen in your house? And Hezekiah answered, They have seen all that is in my house. There is nothing among my treasures which I have not shown to them. And Isaiah said to Hezekiah, Hear the word of the Lord. Behold, the days come when all that is in your house, and which your fathers have laid up in store until this day, shall be carried into Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. And of your sons which shall issue from you, which you shall father, they shall take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Then Hezekiah said to Isaiah, Good is the word of the Lord which you have spoken. And he said, Shall there not be peace and truth in my days? And the rest of the acts of Hezekiah, and all his might, and how he made a pool and a conduit, and brought water into the city, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and Manasseh his son reigned in his stead. Chapter 21. 2 Kings, chapter 21. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hephzibah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, after the abominations of the heathen whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. For he built up again the high places which his father Hezekiah had destroyed. And he reared up altars for Baal, and made a grove, as Ahab king of Israel did. And he worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. And he built altars in the house of the Lord, of which the Lord said, In Jerusalem I will put my name. And he built altars for all the host of heaven in the 2 courts of the house of the Lord. And he made his sons pass through the fire, and observed times, and used fortune-tellers. And he dealt with familiar spirits and wizards, and he worked much wickedness in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. And he set a graven image of the grove which he had made in the house, of which the Lord had said to David and to Solomon his son, In this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. Neither will I make the feet of Israel move any more out of the land which I gave their fathers, only if they will be careful to do according to all that I have commanded them, and according to all the law that my servant Moses commanded them. But they did not listen, and Manasseh seduced them to do more evil than the nations ever did, whom the Lord destroyed before the children of Israel. And the Lord spoke by his servants the prophets, saying, Behold, Manasseh the king of Judah has done these abominations, and has done wickedly above all that the Amorites who were before him did, and has made Judah also sin with his idols. Therefore thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Behold, I am bringing evil upon Jerusalem and Judah, so that whoever hears it, both his ears shall tingle. And I will stretch over Jerusalem the line of Samaria, and the measuring line of the house of Ahab. And I will wipe Jerusalem like a dish is wiped, wiping it and turning it upside down. And I will forsake the remnant of mine inheritance, and deliver them into the hands of their enemies. And they shall become a prey and a spoil to all their enemies, because they have done that which was evil in my sight, and have provoked me to anger since the day their fathers came forth out of Egypt, even till this day. Moreover, Manasseh shed very much innocent blood until he had filled Jerusalem from one end to another, besides his sin with which he made Judah to sin, in doing that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Now the rest of the acts of Manasseh and all that he did and his sin which he sinned, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Manasseh slept with his fathers, and was buried in the garden of his own house, in the garden of Uzzah, and his son Amon reigned in his stead. And Amon was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Meshullemeth, the daughter of Haros of Jotbah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, as his father Manasseh did. And he walked in all the ways that his father walked in, and served the idols which his fathers served, and worshipped them. And he left the Lord God of his fathers, and did not walk in the way of the Lord. And the servants of Amon plotted against him, and killed the king in his own house. And the people of the land killed all those who had plotted against King Amon. And the people of the land made his son Josiah king in his stead. Now the rest of the acts of Amon which he did, are they not written in the books of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And he was buried in his tomb in the garden of Uzzah, and his son Josiah reigned in his stead. Chapter 22, 2 Kings chapter 22. Now Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jedidiah, the daughter of Adiah, of Boskath. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, and walked in all the ways of David his father, and did not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. And in the 18th year of Josiah, the king sent Shaphan, the son of Azariah, the son of Meshullam, the scribe, to the house of the Lord, saying, Go up to Hilkiah, the high priest, so that he may count the silver which is brought into the house of the Lord, which the doorkeepers have gathered from the people, and let them deliver it into the hand of the workers who have the oversight of the house of the Lord. And let them give it to the workers who are in the house of the Lord, in order to repair the breaks of the house, to the carpenters and builders and masons, and to buy timber and cut stone to repair the house. However, there was no accounting made with them of the money which was delivered into their hand, because they dealt faithfully. And Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king, and brought the king word again, and said, Your servants have gathered the money that was found in the house, and have delivered it into the hands of the workers, who have the oversight of the house of the Lord. And Shaphan the scribe showed the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has delivered me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. And when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his clothes. And the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam the son of Shaphan, and Achbor the son of Micaiah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Asahiah a servant of the king, saying, Go inquire of the Lord for me, and for the people, and for all Judah, concerning the words of this book which is found. For great is the wrath of the Lord which is kindled against us, because our fathers have not listened to the words of this book, to do according to all that is written concerning us. And so Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam, and Achbor, and Shaphan, and Asahiah went to Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, the son of Tikvah, the son of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she lived in Jerusalem in the second part, and they talked with her. And she said to them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Tell the men who sent you to me, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring evil upon this place and upon the people of it, all the words of the book which the king of Judah has read, because they have forsaken me, and have burned incense to other gods, so that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath shall be kindled against the place, and shall not be quenched. But to the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord, so you shall say to him, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, regarding the words which you have heard. Because your heart was tender, and you have humbled yourself before the Lord, when you heard what I spoke against this place, and against the people of it, that they should become a waste and a curse, and because you have torn your clothes and wept before me, I have heard you, saith the Lord. Behold, therefore, I will gather you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your grave in peace. And your eyes shall not see all the evil which I will bring upon this place. And they brought the king word again. Chapter 23. 2 Kings, chapter 23. And the king sent, and they gathered to him all the elders of Judah and of Jerusalem. And the king went up into the house of the Lord, and all the men of Judah and all the people of Jerusalem were with him, and the priests and the prophets, and all the people from the small even to the great. And he read all the words of the book of the covenant which was found in the house of the Lord in their ears. And the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord, to walk after the Lord, to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all his heart and all his soul, to perform the words of the covenant which was written in this book. And all the people stood in the covenant. And the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest, and the priest of the second order, and the doorkeepers, to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels which were made for Baal, and for the grove, and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them to Bethel. And he put down the idol-worshipping priests, whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah, and in the places around Jerusalem. He also put down those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and all the host of heaven. And he brought out the grove from the house of the Lord outside Jerusalem to the brook Kidron, and burned it in the brook Kidron, and stamped it to powder, and threw the powder of it upon the graves of the children of the people. And he broke down the houses of the Sodomites which were by the house of the Lord, where the women wore coverings for the grove. And he brought all the priests out of the cities of Judah, and defiled the high places where the priest had burned incense, from Geba to Beersheba. And he broke down the high places of the gates which were in the entering in of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city, which were on a man's left hand at the gate of the city. But the priests of the high places did not come up to the altar of the Lord in Jerusalem, but they ate of the unleavened bread among their brothers. And he defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the children of Hinnom, so that no man might make his son or daughter to pass through the fire of Molech. And he took away the horses which the kings of Judah had given to the sun, at the entering in of the house of the Lord, by the chamber of Nathan-melech, the chamberlain, which was in the suburbs. And he burned the chariots of the sun with fire. And the altar which was on the top of the upper chamber of Ahaz, which the kings of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made, and the 2 courts of the house of the Lord, the king beat them down, and broke them down from there. And he threw the dust of them into the brook Kidron. And the high places which were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the Mount of Olives, which Solomon the king of Israel had built for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Sidonians, and for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabs, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, the king defiled. And he broke the images in pieces, and cut down the groves, and filled their places with the bones of men. Moreover, the altar which was at Bethel, and the high place which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, had made, both that altar and the high place he broke down. And he burned the place, and stamped it to powder, and burned the grove. And as Josiah turned, he spied the tombs which were there in the mountains. And he sent and took the bones out of the tombs, and burned them upon the altar, and defiled it, according to the word of the Lord which the man of God had proclaimed, who spoke these words. And then he said, What title is that which I see? And the men of the city told him, It is the grave of the man of God, who came from Judah and proclaimed these things which you have done against the altar of Bethel. And he said, Let him alone, let no man move his bones. And so they let his bones alone with the bones of the prophet who came out of Samaria. And also all the houses of the high places which were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made to provoke the Lord to anger, Josiah took away, and did to them according to all the acts which he had done in Bethel. And he killed all the priests of the high places, which were there upon the altars, and burned men's bones upon them, and then returned to Jerusalem. And the king commanded all the people, saying, Keep the Passover unto the Lord your God, as it is written in the book of the covenant. Surely there was not held such a Passover from the days of the judges who judged Israel, nor in all the days of the kings of Israel, nor of the kings of Judah. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, this Passover was held to the Lord in Jerusalem. Moreover, Josiah put away those with familiar spirits, and the wizards, and the images, and the idols, and all the abominations which were seen in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem, so that he might perform the words of the law which were written in the book, which Hilkiah the priest found in the house of the Lord. And there was no king like him before him, who turned to the Lord with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses. Neither did any like him arise after him. Nevertheless the Lord did not turn from the heat of his great wrath, with which his anger was kindled against Judah, because of all the provocations which Manasseh had provoked with him. And the Lord said, I will also remove Judah out of my sight, as I have removed Israel, and will cast off this city Jerusalem, which I have chosen, and the house of which I have said, My name shall be there. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And in his day Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates. And King Josiah went against him, and he killed him at Megiddo, when he had seen him, and his servants carried him away dead in a chariot from Megiddo, and brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own tomb. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz the son of Josiah, and anointed him, and made him king in his father's stead. Now Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hamutal. and she was the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done. And Pharaoh Necho put him in bonds at Riblah in the land of Hamath, so that he might not reign in Jerusalem. And he put the land to a tax of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim the son of Josiah king instead of Josiah his father. And he changed his name to Jehoiakim, and took Jehoahaz away. And he came to Egypt and died there. And Jehoiakim gave the silver and gold to Pharaoh, but he taxed the land to give the money according to the commandment of Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and the gold from the people of the land, from every one according to his taxation, in order to give it to Pharaoh Necho. And Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Zebudah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done. Chapter 24. 2 Kings, chapter 24. Now in his days Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him, and the Lord sent against him bands of the Chaldees, and bands of the Syrians, and bands of the Moabites, and bands of the children of Ammon. And he sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servants the prophets. Surely at the commandment of the Lord this came upon Judah, to remove them out of his sight, for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did, and also for the innocent blood which he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which the Lord would not pardon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And so Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiakim his son reigned in his stead. And the king of Egypt did not come again out of his land any more, for the king of Babylon had taken from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates all that belongs to the king of Egypt. Now Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. And his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father had done. At that time the servants of Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came against the city, and his servants besieged it. And Jehoiakim the king of Judah went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother, and his servants, and his princes, and his officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign. And he carried him out from there, and all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold, which Solomon king of Israel had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said. And he carried away all of Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of war, 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained except the poor sort of the people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiakim to Babylon, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and his officers, and the mighty men of the land he carried into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. And the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon all the men of might, 7,000 of them, and 1,000 craftsmen and smiths, all who were strong and able for war. And the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, his father's brother, king in his stead, and he changed his name to Zedekiah. And Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For it was through the anger of the Lord that Zedekiah happened to rebel against the king of Babylon in Jerusalem and in Judah, until God had put them out of his presence. Chapter 25. 2 Kings chapter 25. And in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came, and all his army came against Jerusalem, and pitched against it, and they built forts against it round about. And the city was besieged until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. And on the 9th day of the 4th month the famine reigned in the city, and there was no bread for the people of the land. And the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between two walls, which is by the king's garden. Now the Chaldees were against the city all around, and the king went the way toward the plain, and the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king, and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. And all his armies were scattered from him, so that they took the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon unto Riblah, and they killed the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with chains of brass, and carried him to Babylon. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem, and he burned the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem. And every man's house he burned with fire. And all the army of the Chaldees who were with the captains of the guard broke down the walls of Jerusalem all around. Now the rest of the people who were left in the city, and the fugitives who fell away to the king of Babylon, with the rest of the multitude, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away. But the captain of the guard left a few of the poor of the land to be vine dressers and husbandmen. And the pillars of brass which were in the house of the Lord, and the bases and the brass sea which was in the house of the Lord, and the Chaldees broke into pieces, and carried the brass from them to Babylon. And the pots and the shovels and the snuffers and the spoon and all the vessels of brass with which they ministered they also took away. And the captain of the guard took away the firepans and the bowls, such things as were of gold in gold, and of silver in silver, also the 2 pillars, the one sea and the bases which Solomon had made for the house of the Lord. The brass of all these vessels was without weight. The height of one pillar was 18 cubits, and the capital upon it was brass. And the height of the capital was 3 cubits, and the lattice work and the pomegranates upon the capital all around were all of brass. And the 2nd pillar had lattice work like these. And the captain of the guard took Seraiah the chief priest, and Zephaniah the 2nd priest, and the 3 doorkeepers. And he took an officer who was set over the men of war out of the city, and 5 men of those who were in the king's presence, who were found in the city, and the chief scribe of the army, who called the people of the land together, and 60 men of the people of the land who were found in the city. And Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, took these and brought them to the king of Babylon in Riblah. And the king of Babylon struck them and killed them at Riblah in the land of Hamath, and so Judah was carried away out of the land. And he made Gedaliah the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, ruler over the people who remained in the land of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon had left. And when all the captains of the armies, they and their men, heard that the king of Babylon had made Gedaliah as governor, there came to Gedaliah unto Mizpah Ishmael the son of Nethaniah, and Johanan the son of Kareah, and Seraiah the son of Tanhumeth the Netophathite, and Jaazaniah the son of Maakathite, they and their men. And Gedaliah swore to them and to their men, and said to them, Do not fear to be the servants of the Chaldees. Dwell in the land, and serve the king of Babylon, and it shall be well with you. But in the 7th month Ishmael the son of Nethaniah, the son of Elishama, of the seed of the kingdom, and 10 men with him came and struck Gedaliah, so that he died. And also the Jews and the Chaldees who were with him at Mizpah, and all the people, both small and great, And the captains of the armies arose and came to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldees. And in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 27th of the month, Evil-Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, lifted up the head of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, out of prison. And he spoke kindly to him, and set his throne above the throne of the kings who were with him in Babylon. And he changed his prison clothes, and he always ate bread before him all the days of his life. And his allowance was a regular allowance given him from the king, a daily ration for every day, all the days of his life.